All right, we'd like to thank you all for checking out the first Stukent Expert Session of 2014. We have Zach Olsen on the line with us, and we are extremely privileged to have him. Zach comes to us from Finish Line. If you've been in any mall across the country, more than likely you're going to have a Finish Line in there, and you've probably bought a closet full of shoes or sports gear from them as well. But Zach is currently an e-commerce business analyst for Finish Line. Um, and he has a few sites on the side that he runs as well in the internet marketing space. He's the founder of Minimalist Tees, and he's a blogger at he blogs about internet marketing at by Data Be Driven, and we'll provide links to any of these sites um, in the show notes at the end as well. With all of our Stukent expert sessions, um, while we're going through the webinar or afterwards, you all have a chat box on the right hand side. You can type in a question and actually direct that right to Zach, and he can choose to answer that on the fly or refer all questions to the end. So please feel free to answer any questions or to ask any questions that you have, and um, we'll be sure to answer those. So without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. And here is Zach Olsen.
Thanks, Trevor. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to present. I think Stukent's a super cool company, and I'm excited to be a small part of it. Like Trevor said, here to talk about paid search, online advertising in general. Here's kind of the more or less the agenda, but more than anything, I'd like to, at the end of this, hopefully you have a little bit of more understanding of online marketing and paid search in specific, but also hopefully kindle an interest and curiosity and a bigger desire to learn more about paid search and online advertising. First off, I just have a few slides that show the industry as a whole as it stands now. You can see here that 10% of all retail sales currently go online, and the amount of budget that advertisers spend online is about 31.4%. It's only growing, as you can see. And then of that advertising budget that marketers spend online, the bulk share of it goes through paid search. This slide's a little bit old, but it's the same today as it was in 2011. The majority of advertising dollars online still goes through paid search. Of the different search engines that advertisers advertise on, Google by far, no surprise, is the leader. And this slide I think is really telling in that Google is now bigger than all newspapers and magazines combined, which is crazy. You would never think that this was the case 10 years ago. I'm sure that newspapers obviously didn't. And the majority of this money that Google makes is based off of their paid search advertising. So my point here is that e-commerce is growing. The amount of investment that advertisers are spending online is growing. Paid search is the most invested of parts in online marketing, and Google's a dominant leader. So learning AdWords is a pretty solid career move. Here's a word about getting a job in paid search. A few of the titles that people use, agency versus in-house. You can either start in an agency, which might be a little easier to get a job initially. In-house refers to working for, like I do for Finish Line or Lowe's or Guitar City or any other big online retailer. Your entry-level salary is around 30 to 40K starting out, but it jumps super quick because there's just a huge demand for people with these kinds of skills. 5 to 7 years, even less, really, you can quickly get up to six-figure salary. So quickly, just to define what paid search is and what it isn't. Sometimes these two get confused of paid search and SEO, or search engine optimization. Here you can see a search results page. That orange, it refers to all the paid search ads, as well as in the right-hand column, and then the natural or organic content of search results is in blue. That gets about 70% of the clicks. The paid stuff gets about 30. I have a purple box there for product listing ads, which is a newer advertising tool that Google's introduced. And so SEO has two main parts to it. Search engine optimization has to do with trying to do stuff to your site in terms of content to get it to rank higher, to make food for all the spiders, the search engine spiders, to index your site so it can get ranked more. The other side of it is off-page SEO. That refers to all the other websites that link to your site. With off-page SEO, the main idea here is what Google invented, which made Google such a big deal in the first place, was that they decided that the ranking of a website in search results should be based off of how many other sites are linking to it. And so if you can get more sites to link to your site will rank higher. So why not just do SEO and just forget about all the paid stuff? So I put in this picture here of Happy Gilmore where he hits a hole in one and he says, oh man, that was so much easier than putting. I should just try and get the ball in one shot every time. And his caddy Chubb says, yeah, good plan. My point here is that there are so many hundreds of thousands of keywords out there that your site could potentially rank for that it's really not possible to rank for them all. And not only that, but you have such little control over those search results. Sure, you could try and get them to rank higher, but if you wanted to have an ad show up or have your website show up tomorrow for a certain search query that's really important to your business, you wouldn't be able to do that with SEO. But you can do that with paid search. Even less than, you can do it in 20 minutes. Open up an account, choose your keyword, choose your ad, choose your amount of money you're going to spend, hit it, press go, and your ads can show up for whatever keywords you want them to show up for, which is really powerful. So it's my belief that AdWords is the most effective advertising medium ever. This image here just kind of points to how huge it is, which is an indicator of how amazing AdWords is. And that really has to do with relevancy. And I love this quote that says, everyone hates advertising in general, but we love advertising in particular. The point here is that there's so many times when you see an advertisement and it's totally annoying and it bugs you, like when you're watching some show on Hulu and you see some ad for, JCPenney's 3-day sales event or something dumb like that. You think, gosh, I hate advertising. But you can't blame JCPenney. They're just casting as wide of net as they can. They don't know who's watching the show. They're just trying to hopefully capture the few amount of people of all the people that their ad gets shown to that will find an interest. And the opposite here is true, that we love advertising in particular. If you've ever had the experience of being out in town and you have your phone open, you're like, oh shoot, where was that place I was going to go to do my dry cleaning? You search for it, an ad shows up, you click through, it gives you directions, you show up, it's like magic. So getting your message to just the right people at just the right time is worth a lot of money, as AdWords has shown. And that's really the great promise of internet marketing in general, is this idea of precise targeting. So specifically, why does paid search work so well? I think there's three main reasons here: targeted, measurable, and active. First of all, targeted. When you're dealing with paid search ads, you can target people based on their location, on which devices they're using, whether it's a desktop or a tablet or a smartphone. Obviously, you can search for the keywords, their searches, the languages, Spanish, English, whatever, time of day, the list goes on. Next is measurable. This is just pulled a random screenshot of all the kinds of data that's available within a paid search, whether this is specifically from AdWords. Whereas if you're advertising on TV, you have some fuzzy metrics from Nielsen that kind of give you an idea of your reach and the kinds of people who are watching the TV show, but nothing like this. I mean, here you can actually see how many times your ad was shown, that's impressions, how many times it was clicked, that gives you your click-through rate, your cost, and then you can see how many people purchased. They went to your website and they actually purchased something, and you can have a cost per conversion. Like I spent, in this case, you look at that top row, your cost is $243, and the total conversion value, go a little bit further over, is $1,000. I spent $243 and I made $1,000. That is pretty sweet. And so if I'm the decision maker and I'm looking at this, I'm saying, let's do more of that, because that has a 4.4 return on ad spend, or a cost value, conversion value divided by cost. So all of these measurable, all the measurableness of it is really a lot of the magic behind AdWords. The last point is active. It's just that you're advertising to people who have risen their hand and said, I am ready to buy. Whereas most other advertising platforms, this little graphic here shows Twitter and Facebook, but whether it's billboards or magazines or TV or radio. They do this idea of demand generation. They try and get you to get some kind of interest, have top of mind, make the product more relevant to you, hope you remember it, and then when you're in the shopping aisle at the grocery store, you remember, oh yeah, those Clorox wipes was the thing I saw on TV. That's what I'm going to get because I remember that. Whereas search, you can capitalize directly on the people who are ready to purchase right then and there. And this goes into the kinds of keywords that you use. You can infer the kinds of intent, a shopping intent that a person has based on their keywords. Obviously, someone who's searching for Citibank login is not someone you would want to pay to come to your site. But if you are the New York Times and someone searches for subscribe to New York Times, you for sure want to get that person to come to your site and purchase because that's obviously what they're telling you they want. I think this is just to broaden the horizon of like what all this means. I mean, this is a really down-to-earth way that this has been used. So this is Timothy Ferriss, author of the 4-Hour Workweek. He wanted to try and test which book title was the best before he published the 4-Hour Workweek, and so he chose click-through rate as his metric of being able to measure relevancy, and he chose a bunch of different book titles: Broadband and White Sand, Millionaire Chameleon, and the 4-Hour Workweek. Tested all these different book titles in his ad text, and with $200, he was able to decide that the 4-Hour Workweek was by far the best click-through rate, and so that's what he named his book. Okay, quick word. AdWords and the Google Display Network are two separate things. You can see on the screen when you're inside of AdWords, you can decide whether or not your ads show up in search results on search engines or if your ads show up across the display network. These are display ads. They're the banner ads that show up all over the web. And you can target people with display ads very similarly to how you do search ads. The other part of this is display ad remarketing, which you may or may not have heard of. But you definitely have seen where you go and visit a site, and after you leave the site, it feels like you're being stalked. And you know, a website puts cookies on your browser after you leave a site without purchasing. They show you ads. And if this sounds Big Brother, it's because it is, and but it's very profitable and very effective. Okay, so let me walk through the idea of what a paid search strategy might look like with a fictional company, or like this company that does sells Subarus in Boulder. If you were a paid search manager and you knew somebody at Boulder Subaru and they came to you and said, hey, we have an average sale price of our Subarus about 10 grand, our lead conversion rate is about 30%, meaning that of all the leads we hand to our salesmen, they close about 30% of them. We have $2,000. What can you do with it in paid search? So this is kind of what built out it would look like. And you're going to try and fill in these blanks, right? Your cost per click, how many impressions would you get, how many clicks would that come with, and then what would your conversion rate be on that page to be able to get those leads? So first of all, you could go to the Google AdWords tool. You put in Subaru Boulder, and you get an idea of what kind of keywords you could add, their typical amount of searches they get in a month, and your average cost per click. So you look at this and say, okay, I think my cost per click will be around $4. That means with $2,000, I'll have 500 clicks. And then we get to this idea of quality score and how Google decides to rank your ad. I don't want to get too deep into this, but you can see here that advertiser 1 gets ranked first at a $2 bid, even though advertiser 4 has an $8 bid. And the reason for that is quality score. It is this metric invented by Google so that they make sure that the ads that show up in their search engine are relevant. There's that word again, relevant to the searcher, because the end user from Google's perspective is the most important. They want their advertisers to be happy, but even more, they want the person who goes to Google to search for information to be even happier. And so they don't want spammy looking, irrelevant ads to show up, so they invented this thing called quality score. Made up of all these different parts: click-through rate, ad relevancy, trying to get your keyword to match your ad text to match your landing page, all that kind of stuff. This is a quick view of what quality score on that furthermost column looks like. It's a scale of 1 to 10, and you can look at all your keywords and decide what your quality score is and try and make changes, try and increase your quality score, and therefore pay less and rank higher. So moving along with this idea, you decide, okay, 500 clicks, let's say I'd have probably about 2% click-through rate. That's what I'm hoping to get. That means 25,000 impressions. And when you get those clicks, they land on your landing page. And this is kind of like a dummy landing page, but ideally this Boulder Subaru guy would have a landing page that had a form that was engaging, that explained, hey, come test drive, we want to sell you a car. And people would fill it out and submit it. And so then you just do the math backwards, right? And so you say, okay, well, let's assume we have a visitor conversion rate of 3%. That means of the 500 people who come to the site, 3% of them are going to fill out that form and turn into leads. That's 15 leads. And then I'll hand those 15 leads over to the salespeople. If supposedly they have a 30% closing rate, that means we'll get 4.5 conversions, or 4.5 cars will be sold at an average selling price of 10 grand a car. It means your sales are 45 grand. So you took that 2,000 bucks and you gave that guy a profit of $43,000, a cost per lead of 133 bucks. If you were to do this for a guy at a car dealership, you would say, my goodness, I'm going to give you a lot more money. Please keep doing this. And so you get to this idea of, okay, well, how can I do this more? What can I do to optimize, right? And optimize refers to how can I get more clicks, improve my click-through rate? How can I decrease my cost per click? How do I increase my conversion rate? So of those people who land on my landing page, how do I get more of those people to fill out that form? And then generally, how do I just get more volume? There's this concept of having the customer's intent match the website purpose as best as you can. And that's what those two purple and blue circles down there refer to. And so in this example, I have a screenshot of the ad of Tom Wood Subaru. And I just randomly found this, and I thought it was awful. Because you click through that ad and you land on this page, and it says, sorry, no new specials available at this time. Check back later. This is like an awful landing page, because my customer, the intent of the customer here is all kinds of things, but it's definitely not an error page, what looks like an error page. And this happens a lot. I'm sure if you've ever clicked through ads, this happens all the time, and therefore this person, has a poor experience, and they'll get dinged in their quality score eventually. This one's a little bit closer. You can see the customer intent and web page purpose is getting a little bit closer with Home Depot. So I searched for mulching lawnmowers. I saw an ad that said lawnmowers. It's pretty close. I clicked through and I land on this page and say, okay, I see some lawnmowers. There's some riding mowers and then all kinds of other stuff that Home Depot does. Could be even better if I'd landed on a page that just had mulching lawnmowers. So here's even better. Customer intent has matched web page purpose, where I've searched for acoustic electric guitars. Guitar Center saved the day by having an ad that was just right. It said acoustic electric guitars in the ad text more than once. I land on the page, in bold letters at the top it says acoustic electric guitars, and there's a President's Sale banner that sounds even better. I was like, cool, it's on sale. And I just see rows and rows of acoustic electric guitars at all the different prices with ratings. Great. I can't imagine a better experience on a website based on my intent of acoustic electric guitars. Hopefully that makes sense. And so when an advertiser on paid search has this idea of increasing volume, that means expanding keywords. In this example, this Venn diagram shows you kind of like where you can have these different keywords in these different buckets, and you combine them and you just extrapolate more and more and more keywords. So you see here there's Guitar City, acoustic guitar, the Sonoran is a particular kind of guitar, and then Fender, and you can have all kinds of combinations of which. So you could have a keyword that says Guitar City acoustic. You could have a keyword that says Fender Sonoran, Fender Guitar City, all those kinds of things, and you end up with this huge list of keywords that looks something like this. And it just goes on and on as you add more and more keywords until you eventually get something crazy that looks like this, huge spreadsheets. And this is kind of what paid search managers work with, huge data sets of lots of keywords with lots of data. There are bid optimization tools out there that a lot of big advertisers use. Like these are the names of some of the big ones: Marin, Kensho, Acquisio. This is a screenshot of Marin. Basically, what these companies do is they sell you a software that sits in between you, the paid search manager, and AdWords. And so all of the data that comes from AdWords goes through this bid optimization tool, and they have an algorithm on their end that they have built that's really smart, and it decides what the bid should be for you without you having to manually do it yourself. A lot of big agencies use this. A lot of big companies use these kinds of things. It takes a lot of the stress off of the poor paid search manager who has to try and figure out how to make 1 million keywords convert higher. But the other way, long tail. When we get into this concept of lots of keywords, you get this idea of the long tail, where there's lots of searches for auto parts, but they're very broad and not very specific. But as you further go out, there's huge amounts of keywords that are a lot less popular, but have a higher propensity to take the action on your site that you want them to, a higher propensity to convert. And so a lot of the job of paid search manager is to weed out all of those very effective long tail keywords that people don't search for very much, but if they can get hundreds and thousands of them and each one of those maybe just converts once every couple days, well, it only takes 100,000 of those things where you've got a really effective and quality account that's making lots of money. And then you get this idea of margin versus volume. So you, as a paid search manager, are sitting at your desk, and the VP of marketing comes over and says, hey, we need more top-line revenue. We need to just make more money. And you say, okay, no problem. You go after those more broad, when we're looking here at auto parts kind of keywords, Toyota auto parts, and you say, great, I'll ratchet up the volume. And so you start driving a ton more revenue. The problem is that because those keywords are more general, the intent of that person searching is also more general. They're not necessarily in buying mode as much as someone who's looking for a specific model number or for a specific store. And as a result, they don't convert as well, right? Because if you've ever searched for something, you kind of start out in discovery phase, and then you slowly kind of figure out what you want, and then finally you decide what the product is you want to buy, and then you go and you click through the ad and you buy it. And so when you increase revenue, you say, okay, I want to increase the amount of people who just come to the site who are in browse mode. And then your VP comes back and says, hey, what happened? Our margins have gone to crap. What have you been doing? You say, oh, all right, turn it back. And you roll it back, and so now you have a lot less volume, but now you're converting at a much higher return on ad spend or return on investment. So this is kind of the balance that a paid search manager takes every day of managing the volume versus the margin of all the revenue that they drive. Here's a couple of scenarios. You pulled out these huge data sets and you say, okay, where do I start? You might do a filter for high click-through rate and low conversion rate. And so you filter out those keywords and you say, you know what, people are really engaged with my ad and with the keyword that ad is associated with, but once they get to the site, they bounce and they don't really convert. So maybe I should take a look at these landing pages, these destination URLs, and choose a different one. And maybe I'll get more people to convert on a different page. Maybe you do another filter and say, okay, I want to see all my keywords that have lots of impressions but no clicks. So this might be an issue with ad text. Maybe your ad text is not very relevant in your ad, and maybe you could rewrite it a little bit better, put some more calls to action in it, do a little bit better with an exclamation mark at the end, or something snappy that makes you stick out more, so you can improve it that way. High quality score, low average position, low cost per acquisition. So this is getting a little more complicated, but high quality score would mean basically that your cost per click is low because your landing page and your ad text is very relevant. Your average position is low as well, and your cost per acquisition is also low, which is great because the more you can get people to convert at a low cost per acquisition, the better. So in this case, you really want to bid up on this keyword because if you can drive more traffic at a lower price that converts better, you're much better off. So I've got a few more slides here, and then I'm all done. I thought I would just point out maybe a few things. Hopefully that kind of puts in perspective the mindset or the kinds of metrics and kinds of things that paid search analysts do. I thought I would just point out here a few cool things that's top of mind with all online marketers these days. The first one is attribution analysis, which is the big topic of the day, where you've got all these different paid marketing channels that are driving traffic to your site, but which one do you give credit to? Because one customer might have seen an email, clicked through it, not bought right then, went back to paid search, did a search, clicked through and then purchased. Well, shouldn't email get some of that credit? The other one is remarketing list for search. Within AdWords, you can have your ad show up in search results for higher or with different ad text based on if that person looked at a particular page of your site before. So if this person has been to your site before and was looking at toddler shoes, and the next time they show up in a search result, you can serve your ad to make it more specific to them or bid up because you know that they're already familiar with your brand. Dynamic search ads is another cool new thing where Google takes the offensive and crawls your site, decides which keywords you're not bidding on, and does it for you. Writes the ad text itself and dynamically inserts the ad text and decides which landing page did you use. And you just sit back and tell Google, hey, I want my traffic to convert at a 5-to-1 return on ad spend, and says okay, and then it starts running all by itself. This is kind of similar to AdWords bidding strategies, conversion optimizer, where you can choose keywords and tell that keyword to, instead of a specific bid, like say $2 a click is what you want, you could tell it, like in this case, I want my cost per acquisition to be $49, and then you let Google decide when to run ads and what to do. And you can see in this conversion, in this case, it's doing pretty well because that 42.23 at the bottom, it's riding just along under your target cost per acquisition. This is my second to last slide. I thought I would just point out, learning this stuff takes a lot of self-discipline and a lot of self-initiative, and I think most people who are in this business now basically learn from blogs, and here's a list of my favorite blogs when it comes to online advertising. I recommend using an RSS reader to read this stuff. I thought I'd just plug that. Feedly.com is my RSS reader of choice. And then here's some books that I really recommend to read that are really great for marketing, and also just for So Good They Can't Ignore You is a great book, just in terms of the best book I've ever read for career advice. My last point here is a coupon code for $10 off 75 or more if you want to use it. 10 spike 75. Go to finishline.com, and if you want to do me a solid, go to Google, search for Finish Line, click through my paid search ad, and then buy and use my coupon code, and you give me credit. Not really, I'm just joking, but if you want to, you can feel free. But that does it. I'm going to pass the time back over to Trevor, and I think if anyone has questions or anything like that, we'll do that now.
Awesome. Zach, thank you. A few questions that we have. By the way, I love the Feedly plug. That's one of my favorite RSS readers. Makes it super easy to stay on top of the game, because it changes so fast and there's so much information getting thrown at you. You can quickly siphon out the things you want. But Zach, so here's a question I have for you. Did you say how long you've been in this industry for?
No, I've done paid search for about 5 years.
Okay, so is there something that you wish you had learned, or that you knew 5 years ago that you know now? What could you share with those who are just starting now that you wish you had known back then?
I would say the fastest way to get better at this or to learn is to not wait for someone to pick you or to wait to get a job. But that the best way to do that is to build a website and try and get traffic to it. You can just go to like blogger.com or WordPress and start up a site and write blog posts or whatever. Install Google Analytics on it. Maybe talk to some like family members who have like nail salons or somebody, and just like try and learn on your own. And that's the best way to learn. And I think that's the best. The thing that I took a little while to learn, I was really trying to break into the industry via a stellar resume and I don't know, whatever other techniques there are, but what really helped me get my first job was when I finally proved via my own initiatives that I could do this because I'd done it on my own.
Nice. Definitely getting your hands dirty in the industry marketing world can definitely prove to be beneficial for a future employer. Now, you touched on, I think, both of these, but I wanted to get clarification here. In your opinion, what are the differences between working in an ad agency, so a company that does search engine marketing for businesses, or working for a company like Finish Line, like you do?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest differences is that with an agency, there's lots more variety, where you are going to be working with a handful of clients, maybe 10 or more, of all kinds of different, every single client's going to have different business objectives. You might have a client as a bank, and their main objective is to get new customers. You might be working for an auto parts company and they want to just sell little widgets at the lowest price possible, and so there's lots of variety, and that can be a lot of fun. The downside with that agency life is that you're at the beck and call of your clients, and agency jobs tend to work more overtime or strange hours, or a client might say, hey, can you get this done by tonight? And you're like, yeah, I guess I can. And so you got to work for, till 10 o'clock that night. Whereas in-house, you're working with just your company. I think salaries tend to be a little bit higher for in-house than agencies. Not necessarily, but the cool thing about in-house is that you get to rub shoulders with all the other big marketing departments and stuff like that. Like when I was in college, I really just loved marketing, and paid search for me, I just grasped onto and found it really interesting, and I just loved the internet. And it also served as a great a stepping stone, a way to get my foot in the door to work in a marketing department, because I just love marketing. And if you go the traditional route of trying to get a job in marketing, there are lines out the doors at every advertising agency to be like, an account manager or whatever. But if you know paid search, online marketing skills, that puts you way ahead of being able to get your foot in the door and work for big brands and rub shoulders with chief marketing officers and be a part of the conversations when they're talking about, TV initiatives or multi-million-dollar, direct mail pieces, and how you're going to do online advertising to support their offline advertising measures. And so those are the big differences.
Thank you. You currently work for Finish Line right now. What's a normal day like for you? In my mind, I figure that working for a company like Finish Line, you definitely you have to grow a huge loyalty to your brand, especially when that's pretty much all you're doing all day is promoting, driving traffic, optimizing that brand. As far as Finish Line goes, I love Finish Line. So what's a normal day in your job like?
Yeah, Finish Line's cool because they have something around 660 retail locations in North America.
Wow.
Pretty much in malls. And so there's a huge component of what the website does to drive in-store sales. And that is a nut that no one has yet to crack in terms of how do you attribute your online advertising budgets to offline redemptions or offline sales. And so that's an exciting part of my job, is trying to quantify all the parts that go into of assigning, how are we going to be successful? How do we attribute success to all the different budgets that we have? And a big part of Finish Line, you said, is the brand. And so that's also a really interesting piece, because whereas if you're running a scrappy little company that's a mom and pop, you might not be so worried about it. But Finish Line works with huge companies like Nike. And Nike is super, super picky about their brand image and where their products show up. Obviously, that makes sense. They're a very high-end footwear retailer. And so I have conversations with the guys at Nike and their marketing departments and stuff, and they want to tell us about how they need to, how their brand should be presented online. And then I get to try and take those big marketing budgets and make them come to life on the Finish Line site, and try and optimize them as best as I can, and use a lot of times we use co-op dollars, which is basically Nike or these other brands gives Finish Line a bunch of money to spend on their behalf. And so we take that money, we make landing pages, and we make so-called experiences that the customer has, and then we try and quantify how well that went via all kinds of fun ways of doing multivariate testing on the site. So we can test, a landing page that has different versions, different marketing copy, and then I get to work with all the different marketing managers in e-commerce. So I work with the person who sends the emails, people who do all the social media, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, the affiliate marketers, and we all get to talk about big campaigns that we're doing together, how we're going to take the marketing budget, make an impact, and at the end of the day, how are we going to sell the product on finishline.com so that our marketing budget isn't wasted, and that we can say, hey, we have a target return on ad spend of 4 to 1 or something. So we have $250,000. We have to divvy that up amongst all of the different managers, track all of our ads together, and launch in a certain time, and then get together to watch the results of how well all of our strategies and initiatives went through, and it's pretty fun. I think it's very like cutting edge. I feel, we're trying to always be super cool to the kids who come to finishline.com and give them the best experience possible. We're always trying to improve the site, and hopefully that gives like kind of an idea of what the day looks like. I mean, if I were to say the typical day, I'm sitting at a desk and looking at my computer in between going to meetings with my coworkers. I guess that's kind of like the less sexy way of saying what I do, but yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, it seems like you had a pretty cool gig there. Definitely get to learn a lot from probably a lot of different types of rock stars that work at Finish Line. To wrap this up, I have one last question. You talked about finding those targeted customers online looking to buy. And so if I'm looking at this from a competitive angle here, is it in your copy, in your ads, in Google AdWords, in your search campaigns? But how do you find those looking to buy?
Yeah, so when it comes to paid search, it's a little bit trickier when it comes to display ads or other means, because you have to infer lots of things in terms of making a bunch of assumptions about, like, say we're selling a Nike running shoe, and we say, okay, well, the demographic here is men 18 to 34 who like rap music, and they also hang out on BleacherReport.com. Whereas with paid search, we basically, you would take the search query that the user puts into Google, and you can infer their level of interest in their query. Someone who searches for shoes is in browse mode. They don't know what they want to purchase yet. Someone who says they want the Nike Lunar Flyknit 2 with 8 size 10.5, that person is going to buy because they're looking specifically for what they want. So we would use things like the Google AdWords tool and take the keywords that make the most sense. A lot of times when it comes to shoes specifically, it's not hard because the keywords that are very commercial centric. So like for the Nike Lunar Flyknit 2, that's obviously one of your keywords, or like with the word buy in front of it, or best, or where to buy, or all that kind of stuff. And those are all really strong signals that user is going to purchase. And you choose those ads, and then at the end of the day, you run them. That's the really fun thing about AdWords, is that you get to just constantly be testing stuff. You turn on your keywords, not totally sure what's going to happen. You kind of have an idea. You turn them on, and then you see how it runs. And you look at the data come back, and you realize that like you accidentally drove a lot of traffic to the site from people who are looking for pictures of the Nike Lunar Flyknit 2. You say, shoot, let me add a negative keyword in here real quick for pictures to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then you're constantly iterating on top of that. And maybe you'll notice that the ad text for one, the one that said like buy now was better than the one that said shop all styles. And so you might rewrite your ad text. And then when it comes to the landing page, you really want to get those people who come to your site that you've paid so much for and worked so hard for to actually purchase. And so you say, well, should I get them on the landing page that features the purple version of the shoe, or should I go for the blue version of the shoe? Or you can say, oh, maybe I should land them on a page that's just not a product detail page, but a grid. And it's the list of all the different versions of the shoe. Maybe that'll get them to convert better. So you test all these different landing pages, and you can use something like AdWords experiments for that, or just keyword level destination URLs. And anyways, you run that through, and you just keep iterating, and you have, at the end of the day, a target of, let's say, a 3-to-1 return on ad spend, and if you meet it, then you're happy, and you just do it again for the next year, and the next one, and the next one.
So always be testing is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a lot of it.
Awesome. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the first Stukent Expert session of 2014. Next week, we have Scott Calley, who is a marketing strategy instructor and PhD student at Arizona State University. There, he's researching social media and digital strategy. We're grateful for Zach and his time that he spent with us today. If you want to learn more about Zach, you can do so at his personal blog, zacholsen.net. That's ZACHOLSEN.net. Or you can follow him on Twitter at Zach Olsen, ZACHOLSEN. Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to make it a great day.